Think about the social contract we introduce to young children when they lose their first tooth. We instruct them to take a piece of biological waste, a piece of their own skeleton that has just fallen out of their head, and hide it in their bed. In exchange, a silent, magical stranger sneaks into their room while they sleep and leaves behind cold, hard cash. Because she's grouped with figures like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, most of us assume the Tooth Fairy has been operating this bizarre exchange for centuries. But she's actually the youngest member of that mythical pantheon. She's entirely a 20th century creation. The very first time the term Tooth Fairy appeared in print was in a 1908 Household Finch article in the Chicago Tribune. She didn't even get her first leading role in popular culture until 1927 in an 8-page play written for children by Esther Watkins Arnold. This leaves a rather glaring gap in the timeline. Human beings have been losing baby teeth for hundreds of thousands of years. If the sparkling coin-carrying fairy only arrived a century ago, what were anxious parents doing with their children's teeth before that? The traditions that preceded her were not about light-hearted domestic magic. For most of recorded history, what to do with a lost tooth was a high-stakes, superstitious survival strategy rooted in blood, battle, and the fear of the dark arts. The oldest recorded system of paying a child for a lost tooth comes from 10th century North communities. Viking parents had a tradition called the tand fee, or tooth fee. But the Vikings weren't paying this fee to be sentimental. They were deeply superstitious, and they believed that items belonging to young children carried an innate purity. In the context of a violent warrior culture, that purity was highly valued as a protective charm on the battlefield. Warriors would physically string these baby teeth onto necklaces. When a bearded Norse raider charged into combat, he often wore his child's discarded teeth as a literal purity shield, hoping the talisman would deflect enemy blades and guarantee a safe return. As Europe moved into the Middle Ages, the ritual of the baby tooth evolved. The focus shifted away from securing luck in battle and toward a much more immediate, terrifying threat. Medieval communities lived in absolute terror of witchcraft. A prevalent belief of the era dictated that if a witch acquired your hair clippings, your fingernails, or your discarded teeth, she gained complete, inescapable control over your physical body. Because of this paranoia, parents obsessively disposed of baby teeth to keep them out of the wrong hands. Some buried the teeth deep in the dirt or walled them up inside the mortar of their homes. A popular and effective method was simply throwing the tooth directly into the hearth fire. The stakes for failing to follow these rules were severe. In England, local dogma warned that if you did not properly burn your baby teeth, your spirit would be condemned to wander the afterlife, searching for them for all of eternity. In places like Lancashire, parents weaponized this fear to enforce basic hygiene. They warned children of a dental witch named Jenny Greenteeth, a monster with teeth like pond scum who dragged children into murky water if they didn't take care of their own mouths. These early iterations of the tooth ritual had nothing to do with celebrating a child. They were rigid, fear-based protocols designed to protect the vulnerable from spiritual and physical destruction. Eventually, the fear of witches subsided, but parents still wanted to influence their children's physical development. They turned to an anthropological concept called sympathetic magic, the belief that a person can adopt a specific physical trait by performing a ritual with an animal that possesses that trait. This schematic comparing a human baby tooth with a rodent incisor illustrates exactly why mice became the global tooth deities. Unlike human teeth, a rodent's incisors are rootless and never stop growing. By offering a child's lost tooth to a mouse, parents believed the child's incoming adult teeth would inherit the rodent's unyielding strength and perpetual growth. This logic spread rapidly. In 17th century France, it took the form of a folklore figure known as La Petite Souris, or the Little Mouse. In Spain and Latin America, the tradition grew around Ratoncito Pérez, a highly localized urban legend who eventually became so culturally embedded he earned his own museum in Madrid. In regions where mice weren't the focus, the sympathetic magic continued in different forms. In parts of Asia, children threw their bottom teeth onto the roof and dropped their top teeth under the floorboards to ensure the new teeth grew straight toward the old ones. In Central Asia, teeth were fed to guard dogs to transfer the animal's bite strength to the child. For most of history, the dominant figure trading gifts for lost teeth wasn't a fairy, it was a biologically aspirational mouse. The modern tooth fairy finally emerged when these diverse traditions physically collided in the United States. In the early 1900s, millions of immigrants brought their tooth mouse rituals to America, where they quickly blended with the established Northern European folklore of the benevolent, wand-waving good fairy. But the final catalyst was the post-World War II explosion of mass media. Walt Disney released films like Pinocchio and Cinderella, firmly embedding the visual template of a gentle, motherly fairy into the minds of an entire generation of children. Simultaneously, the post-war economic boom left American parents with disposable income. They had the means to create manufactured magic for their kids, swapping out old survival fears for a cash reward, turning a biological inevitability into a child's first lesson in basic economics. In just a few decades, mass media and middle-class wealth scrubbed a protective pagan rite clean, leaving behind a sanitized, consumer-friendly milestone. Stripped of all the folklore, losing a baby tooth is the first time a child experiences a permanent physical transformation. A piece of their body detaches, often accompanied by blood and pain. It is a visceral, startling reminder that they are growing up, and that process can be inherently traumatic. Humans build rituals around moments of fear. Whether you are a Viking warrior seeking battlefield protection, or a medieval peasant terrified of curses, or a modern parent slipping a $5 bill under a pillow, the core function of the exchange is exactly the same, providing comfort. Even today, dentists lean on the fairy to ease clinical anxiety, promising children that the cleaner the lost tooth, the higher the cash payout. We use the magic to motivate healthy habits. Tucking a tooth under a pillow is an act of participation in a millennia-old human story, a ritual designed to help a child navigate the physical reality of growing up.